The winter wind bites through Moscow's empty streets. Neon signs flicker, but few remain lit. Once, this city was the glowing heart of a vast economy. Now, it feels like a museum of past glories. And behind the facades of luxury stores and crumbling grandeur lies a truth too dark for many to face. Russia's economy is collapsing, and it's collapsing faster than anyone predicted. But how did this happen? How did a nation blessed with the world's richest oil reserves, with vast natural gas fields, fertile farmland, and nuclear power, fall into such rapid decline? Tonight, we uncover the hidden cracks in Russia's economy, cracks that sanctions, war, and corruption have turned into bottomless chasms. The story begins in 2022 when Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Many in Moscow believed it would be quick, surgical, and victorious. Instead, it spiraled into a drawn-out war, dragging Russia into an economic swamp. Western sanctions, once dismissed by Russian elites as symbolic, began to suffocate the lifeline of the state. Banks were frozen out of SWIFT, oil exports were capped, technology imports were blocked. But it wasn't just sanctions. Something deeper, more destructive was brewing inside. Factories shut down. Cars stood unfinished on production lines, missing computer chips that once came from Germany or Taiwan. Airplanes were grounded because spare parts from Boeing and Airbus were cut off. Even Russia's once proud energy industry found itself crippled as pipelines to Europe rusted unused, their gas no longer welcome. And yet, on TV, the Kremlin's propaganda machine told a different story. They spoke of resilience, of a turn toward Asia, of new trade routes through China and India. They said the economy was strong, unshakable, a fortress. But the truth was bitter. By 2023, Russia's GDP had fallen by more than official figures admitted. Inflation quietly ate through the ruble. Prices in supermarkets doubled, tripled. Medicines disappeared from pharmacies. Families hoarded sugar and flour, afraid of shortages not seen since the Soviet days. And for ordinary Russians, life was shrinking. In Siberian towns, miners were told their wages would be delayed indefinitely. In Moscow, middle-class families suddenly couldn't afford vacations, new cars, or even school supplies for their children. In St. Petersburg, once a window to Europe, shop shelves stood half empty, the glow of imported goods replaced by cheap Chinese copies. The collapse was not just economic, it was psychological. The feeling that the future was slipping away. But the Kremlin didn't want the world to see weakness. They staged reports of record harvests and record oil sales. They forced companies to hide their financial statements. They blocked statistics on unemployment. They silenced economists who dared speak the truth.
Still, the cracks widened. Russia's oil, its crown jewel, was selling at a discount so steep it bordered on humiliation. Tankers carrying crude to India had to sneak through sanctions, using shadow fleets of rusty ships. Accidents multiplied. Insurance companies refused coverage. Billions were lost in the process. Meanwhile, skilled workers, the heart of any modern economy, were leaving. Hundreds of thousands of IT specialists, doctors, engineers, and young professionals fled Russia, seeking futures in Europe, in Kazakhstan, in Turkey, anywhere but home. This brain drain hollowed out Russia's future. Imagine a nation at war, bleeding money, losing its best minds, cut off from the world's technology. That is the Russia of today. And still, the Kremlin spends billions daily on its war machine, rockets, tanks, artillery shells. Factories are forced to convert from civilian to military production. Instead of refrigerators, they make rocket casings. Instead of cars, they make armored vehicles. Instead of hope, they manufacture war. But war is a hungry beast. It eats resources faster than any economy can sustain. The ruble collapses under its weight. The central bank prints more money, driving inflation higher. And while the elite continue to drink champagne in guarded mansions, the average Russian mother struggles to buy bread. Is this sustainable? Can a nation survive when its lifeline is war, when its future is mortgaged for bombs? Tonight, we peel back the layers of illusion. We reveal the scale of the collapse, not just in numbers but in human stories. The pensioner in Yekaterinburg who now chooses between medicine and food. The young couple in Moscow who postponed their wedding because prices tripled overnight. The factory worker in Tula who hasn't seen a paycheck in 3 months. This is not just an economic collapse. It is a societal unraveling. Stay with us, because in part 2, we will dive deeper into the hidden corruption, the oligarch fortunes vanishing, the silent protests on factory floors, and the question that terrifies the Kremlin: what happens when the people stop believing? The illusion of stability in Russia could not last forever. By late 2024, the cracks in the economy had grown into chasms that could no longer be hidden. Factories that once fueled Russia's military might were running out of parts. Workers sat idle, forced into unpaid leave. Even military contractors, the backbone of Putin's war effort, began to whisper of bankruptcy. The government tried to plug the holes. They raided sovereign wealth funds, drained reserves built over decades, and forced businesses to sell foreign currency to prop up the ruble. But these were desperate measures, like trying to hold back a flood with bare hands. Ordinary Russians felt it every day. The ruble's collapse meant their salaries, already low, were worth almost nothing. Imagine working a full month, only to find your pay could barely cover groceries. That was reality. Shops that once bustled with goods now stood silent. Pharmacies ran out of cancer drugs, insulin, antibiotics. Parents wept in hospitals where treatments were delayed because equipment had no spare parts. The black market thrived, but only the wealthy could afford it. Meanwhile, the elite insulated themselves. Oligarchs hid money abroad, buying villas in Dubai, yachts in Turkey, mansions in Cyprus. But even they were not safe. Sanctions froze accounts, seized yachts, cut them off from the West. Billionaires who once lived like kings now feared losing everything. And in this chaos, corruption bloomed. Officials hoarded aid, resold scarce medicines, siphoned money meant for the military. Soldiers at the front complained of lacking boots, helmets, even food, while generals bought luxury cars. The anger grew. Silent protests emerged in factory towns. Not against the war directly, that was too dangerous, but against unpaid wages, against hunger, against broken promises. In Novosibirsk, workers surrounded a factory director's office, demanding their money. In Rostov, mothers of soldiers gathered outside a government building, crying for their sons, and for bread. The Kremlin responded with fear. Police cracked down, journalists were jailed, and censorship reached Soviet levels. But repression cannot fix hunger. It cannot repair an economy built on lies. The world watched closely. Economists had predicted Russia would stumble. Few believed it would collapse so fast. But the combination of war, sanctions, corruption, and brain drain created a perfect storm. A storm powerful enough to sink even a nation as vast as Russia. Now, the question on everyone's lips is not if, but when. When will the collapse reach the point of no return?